The sun has gone down at Hangman's Hill, and the ghost at Misery Corner isn't walking tonight.
So, welcome to the Weird Tales radio show, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, magic, and folklore. And now, here's your host, writer, award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and sometime werewolf hunter, Charles Christian.
Hello again. You're listening to the Weird Tales radio show. I'm Charles Christian, your host, and this is episode 51 of the weekly show for the 14th of February 2019. And once again, we've got a splendid mixture of stories for you, everything from urban fantasy to ghosts and more. On with the show. Right, roll the music, Jason. It's time for another of our roundups, news in briefs of paranormal, ghostly, folklore stories. And we start with disappointing news from Scotland. Just before Christmas, it was reported that a site in Leashell, Krishni, and apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly, in Aberdeenshire, that they had discovered a stone circle thought to be thousands of years old, possibly 4,500 years old. And amazingly, it was a stone circle no one had ever recorded before. So this caused lots of great excitement because obviously a lot of stone circles have over the centuries been broken up, ploughed over and generally lost to history. So a lot of excitement and Historic Environment Scotland, the local organisation that looks after these things, started investigating it, and then it all rather turned a little bit sad because the former owner of the property contacted them to point out he'd actually built it in the 1990s as a bit of a feature for a bit of rough pasture near his home. The Historic Environment Record Assistant at the council said, "It's obviously disappointing to learn of this development, but it adds an interesting element to the story." Yes, it's a stone circle from not the Bronze Age, but the era of the Spice Girls. And here's another equally weird and wonderful story. People going to a pub called the Moon Underwater on the Bath Road in Cheltenham. That's a J.D. Wetherspoon's pub for well-known English pub chain. And it was a Saturday night. And to quote one of the witnesses, it was about 10:30 on a Saturday night. And everyone was just acting like normal. And what appears to have happened is someone dressed as a nun. We're assuming it's a nun's costume because real-life nuns don't tend to wear the full medieval habits thing that they're always traditionally associated with. They look like school teachers these days. And somebody in a nun's outfit pulled a skinned goat's head, complete with horns, out of a duffel bag, dropped it outside the pub, and ran off. Yeah. And on the Gloucestershire Live website, there's a rather gory picture of the skinned goat's head. I know. Cue the old joke. You want goat's head stew at Wetherspoons. It's on the menu one moment, and the next day there's none available. See what I did there? Pun. So, yes. Moving swiftly on. What else have we got for you? Well, 17th of January in Madrid, St. Anthony the Abbot's Church is running a special ceremony, started running a special ceremony. They did one this year, they've done some in the past. and it's where dogs, cats and birds are blessed by the priest. And if you're wondering what the connection is, it's because the St. Anthony in question, as I said, St. Anthony the Abbot, or otherwise known as St. Anthony the Great, had a reputation for being kind to animals. And apparently he cured a pig of its ailments, and the pig dutifully followed him everywhere like a pet. So that's a nice little note there. St. Anthony, you may be surprised to know, died in the year 356. So make a note for that. Next January, if you are in Madrid, you can get your pampered pooch or pussycat given a blessing by a priest. Here's another good one. There's a startup in the US called Ambrosia, and it proposes charging old people $8,000 so they can fill their veins with the blood of young people. I should point out that the young people donate the blood. And the idea is that the boost of young people's blood into your system will make an old person feel perky again. Currently, there is no scientific evidence to support it. Well, is there? Because, of course, Elizabeth Bathory, the infamous Countess Elizabeth Bathory, that was one of her little things, wasn't it? Bathing in the blood of young women and particularly virgins. I know. All pause and think of Ingrid Pitt, the late, sadly missed horror movie actress Ingrid Pitt, in one of her most iconic roles, emerging naked, dripping in blood in the movie Countess Dracula. Sorry, Jason, you're probably too young to remember Ingrid. Another little strange one. In Knightsbridge, UK, there's a new street bench appeared, and it features a full-size statue of the Russian witch Baba Yaga. Now, obviously, cynics would say there's so many Russian gazillionaires living in Knightsbridge that it's appropriate that a Russian folklore character should be there. But otherwise, there's actually no connection at all. The description says, Baba Yaga, one of the most important Slavic mythological characters. She possesses wisdom, magical powers, and extreme sensitivity to such concepts as justice. Furthermore, she is a mentor because she passes on her knowledge to a younger generation. That's what the sculptor said. For those of you who are a little long in the tooth, you may recall that Baba Yaga actually isn't really a fairy tale heroine devoted as a peacemaker and then to enlightenment. She was actually a fairly awful witch who flew around in a large mortar. That's the big stone dishes that witches would use to grind up their potions. She flew around with that, wielding the actual pestle, the grinding instrument, like a truncheon. And of course she had the rather delightful house, which was the hut on chicken's legs, always a sign of a nice fairy tale character. And she had an interesting lighting security system around it, comprising of human skulls on sticks, and the eyes would light up if anybody walked past them. Yeah, I think it's possibly more an example of the way that the darker aspects of mythology are being changed and given a touchy-feely, nice, oh, it's not really that bad after all, tinge to them. And what else have we got? Oh, here's another one. And it's one of those of, is this truth is stranger than fiction or life imitating art? You'll recall, and of course you won't recall because it happened in 1845, there was an attempt by the British Empire, the UK as we now call it, to search for the Northwest Passage. connecting the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean by sailing around the top of Canada and Alaska. And one of the people to go on this trek was Sir John Franklin, and he had two ships, HMS Terror and HMS Erebus, and they set off in 1845, and the last message anybody heard from them was in 1848, and that was it. The two ships vanished, and none of the 129 men on them survived. What appears to have happened was they died of starvation, they may have been poisoned by botulism, lead poisoning in the canned food, and there are suggestions that the final members resorted to cannibalism. Anyway, it all ended very unhappily. Now, last year, Ridley Scott produced a TV horror drama, The Terror, which was loosely based around the story, except for it also has a demonic polar bear which attacks everybody and helps kill everybody. But now, news. Apparently, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, their wrecks have been discovered off King William Island in Canada. There are attempts, and indeed some divers have been removing artifacts from the wrecks, which are due to be shown later this year. But the local Inuit community says disturbing the wrecks has reawakened a curse, because there have been 6 mysterious deaths following on in the weeks and months after the discovery of the 2 wrecks. As I said, life imitating art or art imitating life. We don't know. And that's the end of our roundup for this show.
Something wicked this way comes. Weird Harvest Press presents Harvest Hymns, the sweet fruits and twisted roots of folk horror, a 2-volume set of books investigating the music of folk horror, featuring contributions from some of the biggest names in the field: Candia McCormack, Johnny Trunk, Maddie Pryor, Sharon Krause, Jim Jupp and Kemper Norton, to name just a few. Available now via lulu.com. 100% of all Weird Harvest Press profits are donated to wildlife charities.
Welcome, fool. You have come of your own free will to the appointed place. It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man.
And time for a little bit of modern urban myth busting. Back in the world of pop music, which one of the main cultural developments of the 20th century, and as we've seen on this show, heard on this show, we are a radio show, no end of urban myths and madness surrounding the pop industry. So there I was in a part of Norwich I don't normally go through, and I was walking along, and I noticed a big new building that had been under construction for some time, had finally opened up and had a big sign on it saying it was Pablo Fanque House. For the benefit of listeners, that's Fanque spelt Fanque. And I wondered what it was, scratched my head, and by coincidence looked behind me, and there was a blue plaque on the wall announcing the fact that a well-known circus entrepreneur known as Pablo Fanque was born on that site in around 1810. Actually, technically, there was a workhouse on that site, and he was born there. His birth name was William Darby. We'll draw a veil over the fact that the workhouse is now the site of a John Lewis store. Anyway, Pablo Fanque. He was looking at the various reports of the time. He lived from around about 1810 to 1871. And he was involved in the circus business, and he's described quite early on as a Negro rope dancer, and later he is described as an artiste of colour. There is actually some debate. He was quite clearly of mixed race, but there is some debate as to whether his father was of African origin or of Indian, that's Asian Indian origin. The only photograph I can find of him, it's a little bit ambiguous, might possibly be African, might possibly be Indian. Doesn't matter. He was widely accepted in the circus industry, and indeed when he died, it was stated that the circus industry has no colour bar. Very open about it. Anyway, Pablo Fanque, he changed his name to Pablo Fanque, his professional name, was an equestrian. He did lots of tricks with horses and generally wowed everybody. He had a horse called Bida, a black mare. And we have not only never seen surpassed, but never equalled his skills as a rider. Now, Pablo Fanque, by coincidence, is buried in the churchyard in Leeds that used to be the Woodhouse Cemetery. It's now St George's Field, and it's which is in turn part of the University of Leeds and has generally been grassed over. However, his tomb and that of his wife do still survive, and you can find his grave there. He's down there as William Darby Pablo Fanque. Died 4th of May 1871, aged 75 years. Now, that would probably have been the end of the story, except he had a revival of interest in the 1960s when a song called Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite was recorded by the Beatles and appeared on their 1967 album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. John Lennon says the words were taken almost verbatim from a poster he found for Pablo Fanque's circus, 19th century poster. He purchased it from an antique shop in Sevenoaks in Kent, where the Beatles were down there working on films for Strawberry Fields Forever and Penny Lane. And yes, the horse on this particular one on the poster was called Xanthus. The only element that was changed was changing the horse's name from Xanthus, which doesn't rhyme very well, to a horse called Henry, which John Lennon thought was a slightly more comical name, having Henry the horse. Unfortunately, the BBC, in their wisdom, banned this song from the Sgt. Pepper album because supposedly the phrase Henry the horse was slang for heroin. Yeah. And that is the saga of Pablo Fanque and why there is a building named after him in Norwich, which coincidentally is now a building, it's now halls of residence for students at Norwich's University, the University of East Anglia. So where he was born is now associated with the university, and where he died is also now part of a university. Yes, back to his origins. He's described as a man of colour, a coloured gentleman, and the chaplain of the Showman's Guild wrote afterwards, "In the great brotherhood of the equestrian world, there is no colour line or colour bar. And although Pablo Fanque was of African extraction, he speedily made his way to the top of his profession. The camaraderie of the ring has but one test, ability." It's actually a rather nice element, and rather a pity nobody extends it to other things. However, there is more, because, as I mentioned, the building that is now named after him, it's on part of Norwich called All Saints Green. It used to be the Mecca Bingo Hall. And before that, it changed its name several times, but it was sometimes called the Carlton Cinema. Then by the 1960s, it was called the Gaumont Cinema. There was a lot of changing of the names. Curiously, in the 60s, it was a venue where pop bands played, but the Beatles never played there. However, the Rolling Stones did play a concert there in 1964. So now, those of you who are interested in pop music are probably scratching your head and saying, what? The Beatles never played in Norwich? Well, no, that's not correct, because they did play Norwich. They played there on May the 17th, a Friday, in 1963. And they played at a venue called the Grosvenor on the Prince of Wales Road. The Grosvenor is now a quick-fit car exhaust fitting centre, so it's a bit of a sad come down. They originally were booked for a princely sum of £45 to play there. However, by the time it came to the time of their appearance, they'd had a couple of singles in the charts, and by the time of the show, their debut single, Love Me Do, had been followed up by a number 1, From Me to You, and a number 2, Please Please Me. And so their fee was increased to £250, and they gave 2 20-minute performances. And it said that after the show, they could be seen queuing up in a nearby fish and chip shop, ordering a fish and chip supper. Fish and chips with plenty of ketchup.
If you want to grow your business, save time using the latest tech, and look great online, Weird Appeal Digital can help. We have a free, yes, that's free download listing 40 digital tools, apps and resources to help you grow your brand, promote your project, generate leads, and reach your audience. Just go to www.appeal.digital/weirdtales for smart, effective digital design, and your free download. Go to www.appeal.digital/weirdtales. Is there going to be an intro from you to me?
That's what I was just about to do. We've just started recording.
I know, but I thought I'd better ask.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, we'll leave that.
Sorry, I'm not telepathic.
And it's welcome back to Janie, who's been smitten for the last couple of shows with her flu lurgy, as has most of east of England. And also been very busy getting your first one-woman art gallery painting show ready.
Yes, I have. Thank you for mentioning that. I would just pick you up on terminology there. It is actually in a restaurant as opposed to a gallery. A slight difference.
Okay.
But yes, thank you. I have. I've been terribly busy framing, signing, tinkering, stringing, and then hanging. And it's all there. It's all lovely. And I'm quite pleased with it.
That's at the Farmer's Kitchen, which is on the A143 in South Norfolk, betwixt the towns of Harleston and Bungay.
Yes, Arborough, I think they'd call it.
Yes.
Probably quite a trot for you
For
you know,
for our American leaders.
If you do fancy making it, I'll meet you there for a coffee.
Good.
All right.
There's a bargain offer. Right.
Ah.
And our topic is going to be St. Valentine's Day, but we're not doing St. Valentine, the person or whoever he was, because we did him last year. But you've got some new stuff for us, Janie.
Well, yes. Valentine's Day, we're looking at about 1760 when that was first celebrated, or people started to make something of it. And they weren't slow in coming forward with some interesting Valentine-type rhymes and suggestions for young men how they could make it clear to the ladies, the maidens, I should say, that they were interested in, with little gifts. Anyway, I'll start at the beginning.
Okay.
Right.
Very good place to begin.
Yes. And anybody that has trouble expressing their feelings on Valentine's Day, there may be a few pointers there.
Yes.
Then again, there may not. Yeah. In 1780, there was a little book published. It was called The Complete Valentine Writer, or Young Men and Maidens. And basically it contained lots of verses that young men could use, often based around their occupation and the occupation of their maiden of interest. And some of them quite extraordinarily weird. And some are just bizarre. But yes, so it appears that you could pick a verse. For instance, I'll read you this one. So it only really works if you're a butcher.
This particular one, it should be
This
said.
particular one, yes. So the verses are tailor-made for men with particular occupations to send to certain women. So here's an example. Dick the butcher to Doll the dairymaid. When I first saw those eyes of yours, I felt my heart struck full of skewers. A breast of veal is not so fine as you, my charmin' Valentine. I mean, she's just
Meat.
to him. That's it. John the footman. I should have said footman, actually. John the footman to Mary the cookmaid. I didn't know there was such a thing as a cookmaid. Anyway. Mary, your eyes still shine so bright. They're like dead whitlins in the night. I don't know what a whitling is, actually.
Is it whittling or whiting?
No, it's whiting.
It is whiting. Yeah, well, it's even worse. Your eyes are like dead fish, little dead fish.
In the night, yes, yeah. Tom to my lady's maid. Your cheeks, my sweet dear, I to claret compare. And your eyes are like sparkling champagne. And your skin, my dear Nabby, is softer than tabby. That only works, obviously, if your name is Nabby.
Yes. Probably not used since 1780, because I've never met anybody called Nabby.
Who does in the gutter complain, while here I'm a dweller, not all in my cellar. The richest and choicest of wine can give me such pleasure, though all is full measure, as you, my sweet Valentine. To the pantry come down, my wishes to crown. I'll give you a relish that's fine. I've a slice of rich gammon, brawn, sturgeon and salmon for you, my sweet Valentine. Mm-hmm. He's obviously going for the sort of basest greed factor here. Yes. Works for me. Yeah, and that was incredibly successful because they gave gift ideas. Yes, a young man might think about some of these gifts. Some were kind of all right, fairly obvious. A nosegay, which was a little bunch of flowers, a very small bunch of flowers. Wouldn't be very impressed with that. But things like garters, a very romantic and lovely present of a pin cushion, a thimble. I know. You'd be anybody's, wouldn't you, for a thimble? A halter, which, from the horsey world, of course, is a piece of leather work you put on a horse's head to lead it about. So, unless there was some undercurrent of sort of...
sadomasochism going in there. Yep.
And a scrubbing brush.
Oh.
Yeah. You know what would happen to that scrubbing brush if that was handed to a maiden? It would be forcibly inserted somewhere.
Scrubbing a place the sun doesn't shine.
Probably, yeah. Anyway, it was so successful that some years later they did a follow-up.
Ooh.
Yes, the New English Valentine Writer. And they came up with some more winning gifts, including nutmeg grater, and an amorous picture. So I think that was probably not what we would call amorous.
No.
Perhaps just a lady pouting.
Yes.
You know, in the bathroom or something. I don't know. Anyway, these are the rhymes, which get weirder and weirder, really. Okay.
I'm guessing by volume 2 they were starting to get a bit desperate for new trades and professions to...
Oh, well, they'd stopped all that.
Oh, right.
They obviously saw there was perhaps a limited number of ways you could put two professions together. In fact, there's not a limited number, there's an unlimited number,
Yes.
and that would cause the volumes to be an Encyclopedia Britannica type. Anyway, so here's a little rhyme. Your face is like a red brick wall, your person like a maypole tall, and then your teeth stand in and out, as if they danced the haze about. You see,
Well, the haze is obviously a dance, but I'm guessing telling somebody they'd got uneven buck teeth.
and they've got a bright red face, and they're tall, lanky. Yeah. Smack in the face with that one.
Yep.
Right. Another one. Yes, this does go back to the occupations being included. This is an undertaker to a lady, this poem is. My charming fair, I love you well, and words but faint my passion tell. For when you die, all for your sake, I will the nicest coffin make, with such a shroud so white and fine, and none shall beat my Valentine. Yeah. But I think he has more. Right. 'Tis pretty, sir, what you have said.
Oh, this is her reply.
No, sorry, yes, this is her reply, yeah. 'Tis pretty, sir, what you have said, to bury me before I'm dead. She spotted that one, right?
She did
away,
indeed.
But yet I hope to live a while, that I may at your folly smile. Make for thyself a coffin fine, and be the worm thy Valentine. Yeah.
Yeah, put him in his place.
Yeah, well, he needed it, really,
Yeah.
didn't he? Idiot. And, well, let's finally end on this one. My love is like a cabbage, divided into two. The leaves I give to others, but the heart I give to you. So sort of he's fairly saved himself on the last line there.
It is, yes. The others bit's not quite too good for a Valentine, is it?
No.
No.
Perhaps that's why they went over to cards in about
Yes.
1760 and got professional people to write the rhymes. you know,
Yes.
Not have any of that silly stuff. But that's my contribution to St. Valentine's Day. 14th of February, in case it's not in your diary. I expect a card.
I think we're going shopping for bathroom equipment that day or something, aren't we?
Oh, you spoil me.
Oh, my Valentine, you're flushed. When I, yes.
Pull
Thank you,
your chain.
Janie. Well, almost time for us to go. However, let's just squeeze in one last item. It's a quotation from Wakefield, The Can-Do Town That Just May Not. It's a comedy novel from 2003 written by, co-authored by Amy Sedaris, Paul Dinello and Stephen Colbert. And here's how it goes. Most people think witches are a coven of lesbians dancing naked in the forest, celebrating the semen stolen from imprisoned, hypnotized males, which they then use to inseminate one another using turkey basters in order to create a legion of demon babies. Well, that's only part of it. We are also active in community outreach programs. Like that. Anyway, Charles Christian here saying thank you for joining us. Hope you'll join us next time. But until then, Stay well, stay weird, stay different. Good night.
Black Shuck, the demon dog of East Anglia, is baying at the moon.
Which means it's time for us to go. You've been listening to the Weird Tales radio show with Charles Christian, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, magic, and folklore. Keep in touch with us online at www.urbanfantasist.com or by email at urbanfantasist.icloud.com or on Twitter at Christian Uncut. Good night. Join us again next week for another edition of the Weird Tales radio show.